Well, hello, 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 Will Grant. Welcome back to Chat with Will Grant. The star of the show is here. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, welcome, man. I'm so glad to be here. I'm grateful to be here and connecting with you and everybody else that's on here. And I'm excited to share some things about nature and plants and how to nourish ourselves and the earth.
I love it. Well, people are starting to come into the webinar. Welcome, Brian, Alexis, Gary. Richard is back. Richard, I think I've seen your name here every week. So welcome back.
That's awesome.
So, Will,
Awesome.
clearly your background has changed. I'm used to seeing you in front of that wood paneled wall where you're giving us all kinds of goodness and grace. And now your feet are in the dirt out in the yard. What's up with that?
My favorite place to be, man. My favorite place to be. Yeah. This is my front yard garden, my front yard permaculture food forest that literally grows so much nourishment and life for me, for my friends, my family, and even just the local ecosystem and the local environment as well. You know, it gives a really awesome home for all the local butterflies and birds and lizards and just the life that's around, which is really cool to watch, observe, and learn from, you know?
Oh, love that. Well, again, welcome everybody. So glad y'all are here. If you would, go down to the chat section of Zoom and let us know where you're dialing in from. I would love to know where everybody's from. And also, when you start doing that, I'm going to put up a poll. I'm just curious how many of you have been here before. I mean, this is what, number 7, Will? Is this 7 or 8? I lose
I
after
don't think
3.
I thought it was 6, but I don't know, man. I'm just enjoying the moment. You know, I don't care what number we're at. I'm having a great time to be able to jump on these live chats and interact and connect with people all over the world and willing to share some ideas and learn from each other. So I'm super excited.
Oh, I love it. Well, we have Alabama on the line. We have Maryland. We have
Bama.
Florida. Where else, everybody? Where are you coming? Massachusetts. Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Awesome. And then let's see. Will, we have 80% of people have made 4 or more of your webinars.
That's so awesome.
One person's who's a newbie, Will, so be nice.
All right. Well, welcome if it's your first time, and welcome if you've been here before. Thank you.
Awesome. So look, Will, you've got people from all over the U.S. You have a couple of global people dialing in. I think a question that would be helpful. I mean, you're in the sunniest, most wonderful part of the world, but what you grow might be a little different. So also in the chat room, if you would just let me know how many months out of the year are you frozen and cold versus not? Is that a fair question, Will, or you want it more specific?
Yeah, 100%, because that's actually pretty important of what foods you're going to grow. Like all of the methods that we're going to be talking about on how to grow food will work for whatever climate, whatever soils, wherever you're at in the world. It's probably going to be a little bit difficult if you live on the North or South Pole, but I don't think we have anybody there. But pretty much if you have sunlight and if you have times that don't freeze, you're going to be able to grow some food. And all of these methods that we're going to be talking about is going to be working, like I said, wherever you're at. It's just going to, the only thing that will change is the type of plants that you plant. But that's all good stuff. And I'm excited to get it going.
All right, well, let's do that. You've got some Californians here as well. So we know it's sunny and warm in California all the time. Alabama, it's hot as hell. Massachusetts, it can get really cold. Maryland, really cold. So, Will, you've got your work cut out for you. So before we get to the nitty gritty of exactly how you did what you did, I know there's a why behind it. So would you mind just going there briefly for a couple of minutes just to set the tone? Because I think taking on I don't want to call it a burden. I don't want to call it a chore. The responsibility of growing your own food has to be stimulated by something, because it's too darn easy to go to the store and get it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because it started off as, a challenge, and I was willing to overtake that challenge because I was in a position where I was looking for something different. But as I began to learn all these methods, it's actually easier just to walk out my backyard and grab some food than even going to the grocery store. And it's better as well. But what got me started to really overtake the challenge of learning how to do this stuff was I was really hurt, and I was really, really injured. A lot of people know the story already, where my body was just falling apart. You know, I had so much pains in my ankles, my knees, my back, my hips, my shoulders, to where I wasn't even sleeping at night. I was a 24, 25-year-old professional athlete, and my body was breaking down. My body was falling apart. I ended up breaking my leg really bad when my knee exploded. It ended up cracking my femur. And I was just in really bad shape. And I was really struggling, not only physically, but mentally as well. You know, I was battling with anxiety, borderline of depression. You know, my energy was low and my body was just hurting all the time. And when the doctors told me they weren't sure if I was ever going to be able to walk again without pain, that's when I began devoting my life to changing things and to start to really understand healing and understanding regeneration and understanding how to first just get out of pain. You know, that was my goal. And that's why I overtook that big challenge of learning, because I was in pain. And so many of us, when we are in pain, that's when we have that extra motivation to get out of it. And so that's when I just began researching on how to heal the body and how to put my body in the best position to be able to heal itself and to feel really good. And diet just kept coming up over and over and over of, you know, the better that we nourish our bodies, the better that our whole system is going to work and the better that it's going to be able to heal. And, you know, I started studying. I actually watched a really amazing documentary called Heal. And I began studying further on that. And there was like 7 or 8 factors of where people had these huge chronic illnesses or chronic diseases or big traumas, physically and mentally, you know, the things that were going to last forever. And there was some, you know, a good amount of cases all over the world of where they actually overcame that and became like healed from their big chronic illnesses or their diseases or injuries. And there was 7 to 8 basic factors of what they all had in common. And one of them was diet and nutrition. So then I just began, you know, I already had an interest in how to eat to get the most performance out of my body and how to make it look really good. But I wasn't really eating for, you know, to really nourish my whole system. And that's when I began to really studying what is the best foods that we can eat. And it just kept coming down to the more natural, more organic the foods are, the better that they're going to be for us and the more that they're going to nourish and heal our whole entire body. And the more steps that our food takes away from its natural environment of just being picked straight from the earth or grown organically or grown naturally, you know, the more steps it takes, if it's added in the pesticides or if it has to get processed or some way, or if it needs fertilizers or chemicals, that just makes it one step away that's unhealthier, you know, and that kills our body's ability to be able to heal itself, because our body and our guts work so similar to our soils and, you know, and our environment and our earth. And that's one thing that was blowing my mind constantly, is to learn how the health of our body works. And it kept coming back to our gut, and it kept coming back to all the microorganisms and all the fungi network that makes up our gut is really what makes up our health. And not only our physical health, but our happiness, you know, because our moods is quite literally determined by how healthy our guts are. And in the same way that the earth's health is determining on the soils, and, you know, and all the tiny microorganisms and the fungi networks in the soils works in the exact same way as our guts do. But unfortunately, you know, most of the foods at the grocery store are grown with the pesticides, are grown with the herbicides, are grown with the fertilizer that quite literally kill all those microorganisms that are in the soil. And then when we consume all that, if it's loaded with the antibiotics and all the pesticides, it's actually killing the microorganisms, that healthy, good microorganisms that are in our gut, that's what our body uses to communicate and transport those nutrients to, so our body knows, hey, if our elbows hurt, to transfer those nutrients into our elbow. But if we're eating foods with pesticides and glyphosate and all this bad Roundup, we actually lose the ability to communicate with our own body in the same way that the soils do. So that's what got me into it, and just learning that, hey, look, if I really want to feel my best, I have to eat my best. And what is eating my best? And that just came down to eating, you know, organically and eating naturally. And the more I could align my gut with my environment and my ecosystem, you know, the better and healthier that, you know, I was going to be. And then on top of that, throughout this whole process, it became just the best lessons I've ever learned throughout my life. You know, I speak all the time on my 3 biggest teachers are my garden, my breath, and my big brother. And I learned probably more than anything else from just watching a garden grow. I promise you, Edwin, if you grab a seed and if you put it in a pot with some fertile soil, and if you just try to get that seed to sprout, and if you try to get that plant to grow, you learn more lessons on life and contribution, you know, and growth than you'll get anywhere else. Just learning how, you know, we do it in the natural laws of, you know, our ecosystem, of our universe, of, you know, of our world. So I just began to learn so many lessons of how the world works, just watching the garden grow, watching the garden evolve and contribute and create things. And so what started off as a burden has been like my biggest piece.
That's amazing. You know, it's hard for me to walk into a grocery store now and not imagine what you don't have in your garden. How mature is your yard? How many years of growth is that?
It's a little over 2 years, but I've been doing it extremely slow and taking my time and learning throughout the whole process. You know, like, and it was a lot of time of a lot of errors of learning these lessons that I've learned, of understanding, okay, when I first started trying to grow food, when I first learned, hey, I know I had to grow my own food because that's the only way I'm going to get the best stuff. Because simply it's extremely inconvenient. You know, it's not convenient to find really organic, locally grown food. It's just not as available yet. But the more people want it and the more people vote for it, I think the more available it's going to be. But I started off and said, hey, look, I got to start growing my own food. So I went to the Home Depot, I bought some wood, I made some raised beds, I bought a bunch of soil, and then I bought a bunch of seeds and I planted them. And then, you know, the bugs kept eating them. They weren't really growing that well. They kept drying out, you know, they kept dying out. And it's because my soil wasn't good and I was planting, you know, the plants that I wanted to plant as opposed to the plants that really wanted to grow. And then I just began learning about mulch. I came across this really awesome documentary that's on YouTube for free called Back to Eden Gardening. And then it just kind of showed me that, you know, the way nature does it, you know, every fall, nature, all the sticks and the leaves, they fall and they build that soil. They create this humus layer of compost, of this mulch, of all the sticks and leaves that fall. And that's what protects the soil. One thing I didn't learn, or one thing I didn't understand that was one of the biggest lessons, was exposed soil is dead soil, right? So if you have that dirt just exposed to the sun, that sun is just killing the life inside your soil. And I know you see the industrial agriculture today, when you're driving by, they have rows and rows of monocrops, which are the exact same plants for acres and acres, and that soil is exposed. And then to get that stuff to grow, that's why they have to add in all those pesticides. That's why they have to add in all those fertilizers, because they're killing nature's ability to do it herself. So then I just began to learn how to cover my soil with mulch. And then as I covered my soil, that's what created these worms and that organisms and the fungi network and all this life to come into my soil. And that's what really started feeding my plants. And then my soil started taking care of my plants, so I didn't have to. You know, when I was constantly trying to do those raised beds and those annual gardens, I was having to work so much. But then as I just began trying to align my methods with how nature was doing it, just by building my soil, then nature was doing all the work. And my harvests were getting more and more abundant. I was getting more and more food with less and less effort. And, you know, and that's how a garden matures. That's how a forest matures. Every year, a forest gets stronger. It gets more diverse. It gets, you know, healthier, as opposed to, you know, an agriculture system. Each year, you have to add in more chemicals, more herbicides, more pesticides. And yeah, it just becomes more and more difficult with less and less abundance, as opposed to just aligning with nature. You get more and more food with less and less effort. To eventually, all I have to do is, all my work now is just harvesting. You know, I'll go through every once in a while and trim the bushes to make it look nice, and then I'll use those trimmings to help further nourish the soil, just like nature does. But the work is less and less, and the food is more and more. That was a lot, I know.
Yeah, that was a lot. I was in the
but
background trying to pull up those documentaries that I can put in the chat box. So bear with me. I'm trying to figure that out. But anyway, some questions coming in. Our friend David is saying, which fruit has grown the fastest for you?
Ooh, I would say bananas have grown extremely fast. I have this tree called a strawberry tree, but it actually gives off little cherries that taste like cotton candy. That has grown super fast. Potatoes grow so fast. Ginger, turmeric. I have a cranberry hibiscus, where it's just these little purple leaves over there that grow really fast that I've eaten like crazy. Man, there's a lot that grows really fast. And if you focus on the plants that already are growing in your area naturally, they're gonna grow really fast and really easy, as opposed to just trying to plant a row of tomatoes or broccoli. It tends to take a little bit more work than just planting the plants that are naturally natively growing in your area.
Well, I guess that's the question, Will. This seems awfully overwhelming. Give me a 3-step approach. What's the first thing I need to do? Is it to go find somebody who can tell me what fruits and vegetables grow naturally where I stand? Is that it?
Well, I mean, like the first step, it goes back to almost everything. Being present and being the observer. Because the more that you look around your neighborhood, the more you look around your climate and your environment and see what is growing, see what plants you do like, go to the local farmers market, connect with these local groups that are all over Facebook of your local permaculture groups, and you'll find the stuff that grows in your area. If you live in a place that doesn't really have too much of a winter, you're pretty lucky, because pretty much everything grows. But if you live in a place where you do have a long winter, it's okay, things still grow. You just focus on those plants that need a winter, like apples and apricots and cherries and stuff like a lot of the stone fruits. And like I said, there's so much information out there. I know there's a guy from New Jersey that has this awesome food forest, and he's famous on YouTube. If you type in food forest New Jersey, there's this guy that has all these plants that are grown, and he is covered in snow for months out of the year. So the first thing is just being present and connecting with your environment and finding what does grow in your area. And then focus on those plants above everything else. And the second thing is just building your soil, right? Because a lot of times it's a trial and error basis, because you can get a bunch of plants and plant them. And I remember when I first started this, about 90% of my plants that I tried failed. But then on my second go, I got to about 85% and then 80%, but I just kept planting. And throughout that whole process, I kept building my soil. I kept building my soil through composting, through mulching, through taking, like all the leaves and all the sticks, like everything that is growing from the earth, from this green leaf to these brown leaves, that all breaks down into the best soil that we could possibly get. And the better and more that you build your soil, the easier everything is going to grow, and the less work that you have to do. So I would say the first step is just being the observer and finding what is growing in your local area, and connect with your environment and start asking around of who is growing some food and what is growing really easy. And the second thing is really start building that soil. And we can go into deeper on how to really start building our soil and a bunch of different awesome methods, because that's probably the most important thing. If you focus on building your soil and getting that nice, rich, compost and that nice, rich soil, you're going to grow foods that even your local farmers can't grow, because all this stuff is pretty new. Like, people are learning all these new methods in situations like what we're at now, where we're sharing ideas and we're connecting with each other. And thank God, because of the internet, we're able to share these methods that are working all over the world. And even a lot of the local farmers may be 10 years are behind and still not covering their soil, but if we just start covering our soil, and one of the best ways is to call the local tree companies, because they're companies that are all day, they're driving around and they're trimming the local trees. And that's where you're going to get your best soil, from the local trees, those native trees. Like, for example, me, it's the oak tree and those pine trees. Those native trees have been dialing in this climate and this soil for hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. So those tree companies are trimming down those trees, and then they're putting them in wood chippers. And those wood chippers are just creating these wood chips that quite literally break down into the best soil. And for us to cover our dirt with that, it adds as a sponge to keep in the moisture. It adds as an insulation, so it's a little bit warmer when it's cold and a little bit cooler when it's too hot. It feeds the life for the worms and the microorganisms and everything that's going to feed the plants. So call your local tree company, and it's completely free. They have to pay to drop that mulch off. So you can get that stuff dropped off at your house and lay that over your soil nice and thick, and that's going to break down and build this network that's really going to feed the plants. One thing that I found really, really interesting that was a big aha moment, because I thought, say like a tree, those roots come down and they take in the nutrients from their roots, right? It's actually not the case. It's actually this perfect a relationship, just like our guts. Just like our guts, we don't eat in this broccoli and then our broccoli and then our body just takes in the nutrients of the broccoli. We actually have to rely on all of these microorganisms to break down that food for us, and they have a relationship with us to feed that to our system in the same way as Earth does. If we put in that broken down mulch, it feeds this fungi network that eats that mulch and then feeds that to the plants, as opposed to just the roots doing it. So by getting that mulch dropped and by laying down just that organic mass to cover the soil and to build the fertility in your soil is going to bring the life, which brings the nutrients, which brings all the food to grow just so much easier.
Let me put up a poll real quick. Well, I'm curious how many people are growing their own food right now.
Yeah, me too.
Let me just ask a quick question. How many of you guys grow your own food in any amount? It doesn't have to be, you could just grow herbs in a pot on your patio, but I'm just curious for Will to know, right? Well, wow, it's running about 50-50 right now.
That's cool. That's really awesome.
I'll give y'all a few more seconds to answer. Yeah, more people are saying that they do than they don't. So here's some questions for you, Will, before we go too much further. Let's see. So David is asking, what is your experience with pineapple? I'm from Panama, and near my house, a friend of mine planted a pineapple, and it took 6 months to grow, but I don't know if that's an average or if it can take less. Do you know? Have you tried pineapple? I know you do bananas.
Yeah, I've done tons of pineapples, and I love pineapples because if you live in a place that doesn't have a winter, they grow so easy. Like they'll grow on accident, right? And that's one way that I started was I was just buying pineapples at the grocery store, and I was just cutting off the top. I actually have a perfect example that I just did this week. Actually, I'll show you guys. See, look, so I cut off a pineapple, and I took the top, and I just put it in some dirt, and it grows. Bada bing, bada boom. And pineapples do take a long time, actually. I mean, I've had like one of the best pineapples I ever had in my whole entire life was from a pineapple I ate at a grocery store. I cut the top, I put it in the ground, and it grew just the most amazing pineapple literally I've ever had. But they're so easy to grow, but they do take a long time from my experience. It could be like a year or two just to get one pineapple. But then again, like, that's okay. They don't take up a lot of space, especially if you leave them in pots, and they take up no work, so just cut that pineapple top off, put it in some dirt, and just watch it grow and learn how it goes. And, I think that's an awesome way to get started. And then to be able to eat some naturally organic food, even every once in a while, could be one of the most awesome, nourishing, beneficial things that you can do for your health and for your families as well. Just to put that in your dirt by eating the foods that is grown in your soil and your climate, that is going to align your gut with your environment and with your climate. And that's going to give your immune system and your body that extra support needed every time the seasons change. Every time the weather changes, then all of a sudden you won't be getting allergies as much. You won't be getting sick every time the weather's change, because your gut changes with the weather, because you're eating fruits as they are available in the same way that we are designed to eat. The more I learned about what is the best foods that we can eat, it came back to how are we designed to eat. And we're not designed to be eating the same foods all year. We pretty much have a lot of the same diet if you live in the South or if you live in the North. We're eating the same meats and the same vegetables, and that's not really the case, because an apple is going to give somebody who lives in the North the perfect amount of nutrients to thrive in that climate. Just like an orange might give somebody who lives in a more sunny, humid environment the perfect nutrients to survive and thrive in that climate. So by eating foods that are grown from our area gives our bodies the ability to align our immune systems with our climate. So we have the nutrients needed if it's cold, if it's warm, if it's rainy, if it's, humid, if it's dry. So we must, we don't have to, it just helps our health so much to be able to eat as the seasons change as well. And just like, notice a lot of fruits, they fruit in the summertime when we're going to be needing a little bit extra sugar, when we're going to be needing a little bit extra hydration. And a lot of the greens and the vegetables, they're harvested in the winter times. And that's because our diets are going to be the best when it's diverse and when it's constantly changing. And and when we're eating the foods that are changing with what's available at our local farmers market to what's available in our yard, that's what's going to give us that optimal health. That's going to have our brain and body working at its optimal level.
So quick question for you, Will. I know when I walk in the grocery store, organic food seems really expensive. Well, it is really expensive. What about if you're growing your own food? Tell me about the cost of getting started.
I find it to be pretty cheap and absolutely worth it as well. Like, as far as you can go either way. Like you can go all out and spend a bunch of money and have it all ready and there for you, or you can take your time and make it like a learning process and spend a lot less money. Like the soil and everything that I built to build my soil was completely free. That mulch from the local tree companies is completely free. And that's one of the best things that you could be doing to build your soil and to expand the variety of foods that you can grow. That's going to be good for you. And it's actually really good for the earth too. One of our biggest problems, especially in climate change, is there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. And there's not it's just that imbalance of carbon and oxygen. And when we're planting trees and building soil, trees and soil are one of our best ways to hold in that carbon. That's where most of our carbon is actually held, is those storage in our soils and storage in our woods. So for example, this is a Kaliandra tree right here. And you see all this wood that's built up, that's carbon. That's holding carbon. And just to be fair, it's giving us this perfect green that's freshening our oxygen. And then our soils are doing the same thing. Our soils are one of the biggest places to be able to hold carbon in our atmosphere. So it's not only going to heal us, but it's going to help heal the earth as well. And I think that's one of the best things that we could be doing, is working with the earth and working with each other to help just nourishing ourselves and nourishing the earth. I'm not sure if I answered that question right.
Well, but, I think that's fair. I think some people, when they hear the word organic, get a little turned off because their only experience with it is seeing that aisle at the grocery store, and they're like, good gracious, that's like 2-3 times what I'm used to paying. So but
it's a voting process, Edwin. And that's one of the most important thing is, like, one, if you do get the organic stuff, you don't need as much. You're getting those foods are so much more nutrient dense that you can consume less. So you won't be spending more if you still keep eating the same amount. But the thing is, when you're buying organic and when you're buying the high quality stuff, that's a voting process. That's really how we vote. When you're buying, the high quality stuff that's grown in the good soils, you're telling them that you want more of that, as opposed to when you're buying that cheap processed food that's grown in the corn, you're voting for more of that. So, if I recommend just doing the best you can, consume less food, because the less food that we eat, ultimately, the healthier we're going to be and the longer we're going to live. Like that thought of having to eat, 6 meals a day every 2 to 3 hours and have a bunch of grains and a bunch of meat, that's a myth. That is sold to us from that, our agriculture industry of today trying to sell us an excess of grains and trying to sell an excess of sugar and excess of meat, which is really not the case. I promise you, the less that you do eat and the less meals that you have a day, the healthier you're going to be and the better you're going to feel, the higher energy you're going to have. And then when you do eat and make sure it's that high quality, nutrient dense stuff, you're going to have more energy. You're going to need less of it, and you're voting for a better world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Will, we got some questions coming in. When we get to those, Richard is asking, are you part of any seed exchanges or plant swapping groups? That's a new term for me.
Yeah. No, but I wish. Other than so what I've been doing is, one of my biggest goals throughout my life is to plant as many plants and as many forests as possible, right? So one of the beautiful things about plants is if you have one plant, you can make more plants from that plant. So for example, this coriander tree, once or twice a year, I'll find little baby coriander plants all around it that I can pull up and I could pot and I could plant. Even a banana tree here, I'll show you right here. You have this nice little rack of bananas coming through, right? And when it gives a rack of bananas, it also gives 3 or 4 other banana plants that come from it. So, and I could cut off cuttings and they all give seeds and they all give baby plants. Like I got the aloe veras, they're always giving off more aloe veras. And what I've been doing is just starting my own little mini nursery here, So I've been taking all the cuttings and all the seeds from my plants and just learning how to propagate it. And like I said before, I'm getting the best lessons of my life, just learning how to make a seed, put it in fertile soil, and then get that seed to grow and get that seed to sprout and get it to turn into a plant and a life, and to get that plant to learn how to contribute to its environment. I'm getting the best lessons possible. And what I've been doing with this stuff is I've been starting other gardens and other food forests with my friends. So I have friends that come over all the time and they see what I've done and they're like, oh my God, I got to plant something. Here you go. So I've been sharing seeds with all my friends. I've been sharing plants with all my friends, and just places that I go to all the time, like my manager's house, the local BMX track, a lot of my friends' house. I'm taking all of these seeds and all of these tiny cuttings and I'm planting in places that I see all the time, because who doesn't want to live in a better community? Who doesn't want to go to, like the places that we go to all the time, who doesn't want them to be prettier, healthier, better? And we have to take action with ourselves. We can think global, but we must act local. How can we improve our immediate environment? How can we improve just the dirt that we have right outside our front door? Or say if there's a workplace that we always go to all the time, how can we improve, the land on that? And just planting a little pineapple plant just at your work, no one's going to argue. No one's going to get mad at that. And you don't have to tend to it. You don't have to work on it. Just plant it one time. And then every time you walk out for a little break, just enjoy the new leaves, enjoy the growth of it. And that's one of the most beautiful things is every time I have a plant, I have another opportunity to create 100 more plants.
Wow. You're not very passionate about this, Will. I'm very disappointed in your passion. Richard is also asking, and I know you alluded to it earlier, but we kind of diverted to the soil as the cause of the problem. But there are pests that love to eat on the things that we plant. How do you address garden pest and plant diseases, and what natural solutions have worked for you?
Well, first of all, when I first started this in my raised beds and my bought soil, that's what happened. I planted all these peppers and I planted all these tomatoes, and 2 weeks later, the ones that didn't dry out and die because I forgot to water them, they got ate by pests, right? And think about it like this. Who worries about the pests in the forest, right? There are pests, but they don't cause any real damage. And the reason why, because everything is in balance, right? So pests come to weak plants that are in the wrong place, So for example, one thing that you could do for pests is if you have a diverse planting of plants with a bunch of different plants, not a monocrop. So for example, if you plant a bunch of tomatoes, it's going to attract a pest that loves tomatoes, right? But if you plant a bunch of tomatoes and a bunch of fruit trees and a bunch of apple trees and a bunch of caliandra plants and some cherry plants, then all of this brings this diversity to where if there's a pest to come eat the tomatoes, then the other plant brings another pest to eat that pest. And then it just brings this balance of this ecosystem, of this food chain, so nothing ever gets out of balance. And I promise you, the more that you build your soil, the less pests you will have, because the soil is the immune system, right? Pests go to the weaker plants, always, right? So if you build your soil and strengthen your soil with the local stuff, like the local mulch and your compost, that's going to align your soil's immune system to be able to fight off the pests. And then by planting a diverse plants with a variety, it's going to create that balance to where nothing is out of balance, so nothing's going to get eaten. See, so let me show you a little example here, right? So for example, I have this mango tree, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It looks healthy, but look, I have a couple leaves here that got eaten, right? Can you guys see that? Look, I have 2 or 3 leaves here that, you know, but overall, like the plant is healthy. You know, the plant is okay. And that's because nothing got out of balance. A bad pest is where they go and they eat that whole entire plant. But when he was eating this one leaf, some other bug came and ate that bug. And it creates this whole little ecosystem, you know, this whole environment, you know, and we plant plants that are more about than just plants that feed us, but we plant plants specifically to feed the ecosystem. Like, for example, this plant right here is a caliandra tree. It doesn't give off any food that feeds me, but it gives off food that feeds the ecosystem. It doesn't have any on it right now, but it gives off this really pretty pink flower that attracts the beneficial butterflies, you know, the beneficial bees and the pollinators and the predatory bugs. We actually plant plants that that bring the predatory bugs that eat the bad bugs. You know, for example, ladybugs. When you see a ladybug in your garden, you know that that's your friend, because ladybugs actually eat, you know, the plants that eat the other bugs, you know, or I'm sorry, ladybugs eat the plants. Ladybugs eat the bugs, they eat the plants, right?
There you go.
You know,
that's biodiversity, right?
Exactly, exactly. You know, so we see, and this plant right here, a fire bush, you know, it's a beautiful plant, you know, that gives off these beautiful flowers. And what they do is these plants attract the balance, and they attract the ecosystem and, you know, the birds and the bees and the pollinators that all balance out each other, so you don't really have to worry about pests. So I promise you, if you do have pests, just keep building your soil, because that's your immune system, right? That's your garden's immune system. That's the earth's immune system, is build that soil. And then 2 is plant different plants. Plant a variety of plants, and plant some plants that don't just feed you, but feed the local ecosystem as well. I have the caliandra. Oh, and this caliandra plant, on top of it feeding, you know, that local ecosystem, it's actually a natural nitrogen fixer. So it fixes fertilizer into your soil. So it feeds the soil and it feeds the ecosystem as well. And then I have this plant here that is one of my favorites. It's called a sweet almond. And then it gives off this, oh my God, I wish you guys can smell this thing. Look, it gives off this little flower here that smells. Whoa, do you see the bees all the way around it? Here, I'll show you guys. Look, and there's bees all the way around this thing. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Look, and it just gives off this super strong scent that is it smells so good. It smells literally like Febreze, and that attracts the bees. It attracts the predatory bugs that eat the bad bugs. It attracts the butterflies. It attracts all the life that you want to see in your garden that brings a healthy garden.
So, Will, Ian is asking, did you learn this by trial and error with maybe some internet searches, or was a certain book or resource you used to learn how to propagate soil and nurse offspring of those plants?
Yeah, okay, so one, I probably learned the most from 2 things. Hold on, I'm super zoomed in right now. I probably learned the most from 2 things. One, you got to check out that Back to Eden garden method. Okay, everybody, when they're finished with this, go on YouTube and type in Back to Eden. And
so I'll put the link in the chat room for everybody.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things that was like, aha, I have to build my soil so the plants can grow on their own. Okay. And, you know, and that's when I learned about the mulch. And then that's when I learned about covering the soil and just mimicking, you know, how the forest does it. And then I went from that thing, and then I ordered some mulch. I started building my soil, and that's what brought me to Pete Canaris's channel. Another awesome channel that I want to have him as a guest is Pete Canaris from Green Dreams. He actually has a whole YouTube channel where his job is traveling all around Florida and installing these permaculture food forest landscapes. And he shows exactly how to do it and just gives off so much information. So between that, Pete Canaris, and then just trial and error. Like I said, when I first started, 95% of what I planted all died. And then it went to 90%, and then 80%, and then, you know, and now it's still probably only about, I have a 70% success rate, you know, but I'm still learning. I'm still getting better. And I learn through every single day. Every time I plant a seed, I learn a little bit more. Every time that I have something sprout, every year, I learn so much more of how the plants change throughout the seasons, how we change throughout the seasons, and just learn how everything works. So I would say back to Eden, Pete Canaris, and just trying. Keep planting and keep building soil. Just keep focusing on doing those two things without worrying about some certain result of, okay, I need to get this amount of food. But just focus on learning how to build that soil and finding what works, and then planting plants, and keep planting plants. Because if you first start out and you go buy 20 plants and then you plant them in the ground and 15 of them die, that's okay, because you got 5 new plants, right? And then when you go buy 20 more, then maybe only 10 of them will die, because now your soil's better. Now your diversity's better because you have more plants and you have better soil, and plants actually help each other. You know, and that's the thing, that what they don't do in that regular agriculture system, if you spray it with the chemicals, when you have that mulch, it creates this fungi network, almost like the internet system. So especially if you have like a big oak tree and then all these fruit trees, there's this network underground that if you do get a pest, like say if that fire bush, it gets a pest on it, it's connected with the whole ecosystem underground. So those other plants know that there's a pest, and they can help it, and they can assist it, and they could bring in the predatory insects to feed on that pest, as well as if there's some plant that's low on a certain nutrient, they can even transfer nutrients. Plants communicate with each other. And I learned a lot about that from a book called The Hidden Life of Trees. So there's another resource if you want to learn more, is called The Hidden Life of Trees. And it really explains a lot how plants can communicate with each other, and they communicate with us in a lot of ways too. And they use that fungi network that is from the mulch by building the soil to communicate and to transfer nutrients, and just build that diversity and build that strength. It's like anything in a family, in a company, in a nation, diversity brings strength. You know, the more that there is a diverse amount of talents and gifts and purposes, you know, the stronger it will be as a whole.
So Richard said he loves that book. So clearly that is resonating with some of the people. Will, I know you make a lot of those super shakes. Walk me around the yard and just tell me what you grab and how much to make that super shake.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a lot in my backyard too that I grab. See, because that is a lot of my perennial vegetables like moringa and katoop. Oh, for example, I just harvested a bunch of moringa. Yes, like I literally pulled off one branch, and I got a bunch of moringa, a bunch of seed pods, and there's some moringa. I'm just letting it dry out, and that's what I'll put inside the smoothies. And then I'll put some bananas, I'll put some papayas, some katoop here. But I'll give you guys a little bit of a tour. First of all, this tree right here, it's just a little baby tree. This is a peanut butter tree. I kid you not, it gives off little cherries that taste like peanut butter. So I'm super excited about that one. But we have some aloe vera. Look, this is actually an avocado tree from just throwing out avocado seeds in my front yard. It grew a whole tree. That's what happens when you really focus on building soil. You're going to have avocados growing on accident. But
a tough problem to have.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of bananas here. This right here is a mango tree from actually a mango that I ate at a grocery store. I thought was so delicious. So I took out the pit, I planted the seed, and 2 years later, we have a whole mango plant. Whoop. Then we have some papayas up there, right here. Oh, this right here is all Mexican sunflower. And this stuff is actually super cool. I want to tell you guys about because it's another really awesome way to build your soil. And you can grow your fertilizer. So for example, this is Mexican sunflower. It can grow 2 feet in a week, 1 foot in a week, and it's pound for pound more nutritious for the soil than chicken manure. And all you do is chop and drop because it grows so fast. You cut it and just keep feeding it into the soil, covering your soil with it, and that breaks down and it feeds that fertilizer, that nitrogen right into the soil, and it gives off really pretty yellow flowers that again tracks the bees and the pollinators and the birds and all that stuff. But we have some coconut here. This is chaya, which is tree spinach. This, I don't put in my smoothies because it's best to boil this for 20 minutes, but it's more nutritious than spinach, and it's super, super good. I got some spiring ginger, some avocados. You see, I got a bunch of racks of bananas coming through. I got some ginger and turmeric. I got a big pineapple plant there. This right here is one of my favorites that's fruiting now. We got some mulberries. Oh yeah, we got some mulberries ripping right now. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Pretty much year round, I can walk out and eat some of these mulberries. And berries are some of the most nutritious fruits that we can eat, just loaded with antioxidants and loaded with that good stuff that's going to feed our gut microbiome. Oh, and those are my cherry tree. And I have a bunch actually here too. I got so much here. Look at all these cherries. Look, I have all these cherries growing, and these almost taste like popcorn here. Oh, yeah.
So which plants would you say are the most prolific that you have gotten a lot of bounty from, and they're easy to grow?
Well, I would say the moringa and the bananas. You know, like moringa will actually grow everywhere as an annual too. But if you live in a place that doesn't freeze a lot, it'll grow as a perennial. But the moringa is just constantly growing all year, and I could just pick it, and I use that pretty much every single day. And the bananas are constantly growing too. So I would say the moringa, the bananas, the katuk, cherries. But that's the beautiful thing, is it's different depending on what month it is. It's different or depending on what season it is. And that aligns us with eating the best way possible. Because one thing that I learned actually recently from meeting with this nutritional doctor is that we get food sensitive. So for example, broccoli is really healthy. We all know how healthy broccoli is. It's one of the most healthiest vegetables that we can eat. But if we eat broccoli every single day, 365 days a year, our body gets used to it in the same way as if we were doing the same workout. So we are going to get less and less of those nutrients. So to be able to, again, diversify our diet in the same way that the garden does, then we are able to change our diets throughout the year. So that's what's going to give us that best health, to where our strongest immune system, our strongest nervous system, and then on top of that, our gut controls how we feel mentally. People don't realize that, but our gut is directly related to our hormones and our mood. So, you know, the better we nourish our gut, the better and happier we're going to be. And, you know, that's what I'm all about, being happy, healthy, and strong. So
absolutely. I've heard a hashtag like that before. So Will, looking at the size and scope of your garden, I'm becoming very concerned about your water bill. How do you irrigate and maintain the plants with water? That just seems like you need to bring in the ocean, right?
No. I actually don't ever water.
Seriously? So no irrigation system?
Well, the only time I will ever water is when I'm first planting a plant, just to help the success of it. But when you mulch, you don't. Who waters the forest, Edwin?
That would be God. Yeah.
I'll wait. See, and that's the beautiful thing, because if you think of mulch here, and I'll show you guys a close example, like mulch. These are the wood chips, right? See, and you see, this works as a sponge. This works as an insulator. So when it goes months without raining, it's holding in that moisture, and it doesn't expose the soil from the to the sun so that moisture stays and that soil is just richer. And if you're mulching, you don't really have to worry about watering it constantly. Of course, I mean, it can help because water brings life. So the more that you do water, the faster everything will grow. But if you have layers on layers of mulch, that works as a sponge to where when it does rain, it's going to absorb that water as opposed to just running off, right? Because if you have poor soils, when it does rain, that water doesn't even seep down into your soil. It drains off into the gutters, or it drains off into your neighbor's yard that maybe has mulch, right? But but when you do mulch, that holds in that water, it absorbs that water, and it keeps it deep into your soils. So for when the times you are on a drought and it doesn't, water, then it has that extra source of water in there. And then if it does go a while without raining, it's only going to make your plants healthier, because that makes the roots just pour those roots down even deeper to search for that water that the mulch has been harvesting.
Oh, that's awesome. Richard is saying he's Filipino and his culture loves Moringa. My grandmother used to use it in their chicken soup. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we cook with it. We eat it raw. We put it in our smoothies. I'm trying to actually make like a powder out of it for, I live in a house with athletes constantly in and out, and they're all about the Moringa, because this stuff is for real. This is like pound for pound the most nutritious leaves that we know about growing on this planet. Why wouldn't you grow this stuff? And it does grow. If you have a winter, it just grows as an annual, and it grows so fast and so abundant, which is an amazing plant. So yeah, Moringa is the ish.
All right, Alexis is saying, is it all right to add mulch over seedlings, or how long should you wait for a plant to grow before you add mulch?
I would add mulch immediately and right away. But when you're wanting to plant like a seedling, just so for example, if you're wanting to plant a seedling, so this is mulch here, just kind of pull the mulch back a little bit to then get into the dirt, right? So, it's pretty simple. Just like, you want to mulch as soon as you can, because the longer that mulch sits, the more mature your soil is going to be, and that's going to help and feed everything. So just mulch around it, if that makes sense.
Got it.
So, don't cover the seed, but just mulch all the way around it. And then every time it rains on that mulch is going to dispose like a compost tea to all of your plants, which is really, really good.
Awesome. Well, look, for those of you who are still here, I would love to know in the chat box what you guys would like to learn or hear more about from chatting with Will. I mean, he's a wealth of information in body, mind, and spirit information, knowledge, wisdom, strategies, tactics, skills, you name it. But I would love for y'all to just stick over in the chat box what you want to hear more of, because we're going to keep doing this, right, Will? So
yeah. I mean, I'm loving these. I'm hoping to do at least one every single week, talking about all things that's just going to help us evolve and be able to contribute to ourselves, our family, our world. And, we're all in this together, so the better I can take myself, the more I can help you, and the more I can help you, the more you can help me, and we can all help each other, so that's what this is about learning about nutrition, movement, our bodies, mindset, growing our food, healing the earth. This is all stuff that we're all learning about together, and I'm excited to share ideas with.
Well, speaking of helping you wanted to help some of the people on the call today with something. What was that, Will?
Yeah, I wanted to give out my course for free to one person this week. My Happy, Healthy, Strong course. It's that 6-week program that is literally all the best routines, workouts, and habits you can be doing to step into your best self. That kind of aligns your mind, your body, your spirit, your emotions, everything to have you reaching your potential every single day and evolve that potential every single week. And it's a 6-week course that, each week gets a little bit tougher and a little bit more in depth, but teaches you these awesome habits and routines that just has you feeling really good. And I want to give away this course for free for one person this week. And it's going to be a challenge. I want whoever's watching on this to get out this week and start planting in their yard, start building their soils and planting some trees and planting some food and planting some plants, and just take a picture, take a video, post that on your Instagram, post that on your story, and tag me. And at the end of the week, I'm going to pick one person pretty much of who I see is putting in the most effort on building their soil and, and planting the plants and nourishing themselves and their environment. I'm going to give my course away to one person. And so get out there and plant one tree. Even if you plant one tree and you may be the only one to sign in, you're getting a free course, So go out there and find your favorite food, plant some seeds and plant some plants and get hey, I promise you, if you call your local tree company and if you get a whole load of mulch dropped, you'll probably win my course.
That is awesome. So Will, we were talking about our calendars and looking when we would have another opportunity to chat. And guess what special day of the year it's going to be?
What?
Your birthday.
Wait, when?
May?
Yeah. Oh, well, I know my birthday. Yeah, but aren't we going to have what's the date today?
The date today is the 9th.
Is the 9th. I think we should have one more and then my birthday.
One more and then your birthday. Well, that's the problem. I'm on vacation. So you can have one. I can set it up, but you will be the solopreneur. We can do that.
Well, we'll figure out. Well, let's plan for my birthday then, May 21st. We're going to be on here with Mr. Move You shirtless, huh?
That's exactly right. Andrew's going to be on. That was my gift to you, Will. That was my birthday present to you, is getting Andrew to Move You.
Yeah, so if you guys are on here, and if you guys have any sort of body pains, anything struggling with your knees, your ankles, your back, you're definitely going to get on the next one, May 21st, because we're having the guy from Move You jump on here with us. And, he went through some pretty gnarly injuries too. I think he got into a really bad car accident and broke his back, his C4, C5. I'm not sure exactly the results, but it was pretty gnarly to where he was in some bad shape. And, he's been in a crazy amount of knowledge that helped me through my injuries. I really believe that Move You was the biggest factor in helping me heal as far as with my training, as opposed to, of course, growing my own food and the breath and all that stuff has helped too. But learning how to really move and use my body was one of the most beneficial things to help heal my body. So if you do have any body pains, you definitely want to make sure you're in on the next one.
And we might change up it's going to be a different day and it's going to be a different time as well, because we understand that, maybe a different day of the week might be more valuable to people. So we're just going to give it a try, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, it's like everything. We're trial and error, so, we tried Saturday and Saturday's been working really good, but I think it's always good to try something new to see what you guys like. So I think we're going to try a Thursday, and it's my birthday too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have, guess what, Will, another surprise for you that day, but I'm not going to tell you who might pop into our phone call, but you're going to be floored. But man. I'm just going to leave it there. This
is exciting. I'm excited. So we got some surprise guests maybe, huh?
I love it. Well, Will, there are no more hold on. How about these are topics for next time. So yeah, I'll make a note of those. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. And Will, any final words to the crew who is still here after an hour?
Yeah. One, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming. Hey, get out and really source the highest quality stuff. If you're going to go to the grocery store, make a good voting process and vote for the good stuff. Try to figure out how that food is being grown. If it's grown in a way that's good for the earth, it's going to be good for us. If it's grown in a way that's not good for the earth, it's going to make us suffer. So get out there, get the good stuff, plant some plants, get your hands in the dirt, build your soil. And I want to see you guys starting to grow some of your own food. Post it on the story and tag me, and I want to see it.
Fantastic. Will, always a pleasure to be here with you, my friend. I will get on my calendar and we'll see if we can squeeze in another one before your birthday on May 21st. Awesome.
All right, man.
Good to be here, brother. Peace out, everybody.
All right, thank you. See ya.